So we jump forward 7 more years to the release of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Although in movie time, we're actually jumping forward 10 years. Sarah Connor has given birth to John Connor and has gotten herself locked up into a mental institution for her crazy conspiracies about there being a future with Terminators. We find 2 Terminators getting sent back in time, one of them being Arnold Schwarzenegger, the other one being Robert Patrick. We're unsure of what their identities are and what their motivations are. So we have to, see them do something.
Right? I mean, the film kind of naturally would lead you to assume that there are now 2 evil Terminators chasing down John Connor. But does this turn out to be the case?
Or at least,
Answer my question.
or at least one Terminator being evil and chasing down John Connor, because we know that the Arnold Terminator is evil, and we don't know who Robert Patrick is.
Well, we do see him kill a cop, so we think they would lead us to believe he's not a good guy.
Robert Patrick being the T-1000.
So I really like the way that the scene is done in the mall, where the 2 Terminators come face to face with John in the middle, and then Arnold takes out a shotgun from the bouquet of flowers and shoots the other Terminator.
Yeah.
To protect John Connor.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really good twist on the already established universe of Terminator.
Just in general, to talk about this sequel, it's definitely a lot more action-packed than the first one, and included, unlike the first one where we complained a bit about how dated some of the special effects look, the special effects in this one actually still hold up, I think.
Yeah, they were really ahead of their time.
I mean, now just by the fact that you have 2 Terminators constantly bumping heads and fighting against each other, as opposed to one Terminator fighting 2 humans who really couldn't defend themselves too well. And not only that, but just because the good guys now have a Terminator on their side doesn't mean that they're not still vulnerable and weak and weaker from protagonists. They're still vulnerable protagonists. Because the T-1000 just happens to be pretty much indestructible.
So Arnold Schwarzenegger even says that the Robert Patrick's Terminator, the T-1000, is more technologically advanced than he is and superior to him.
Yeah.
So clearly our protagonists are vulnerable, so that makes the T-1000, Robert Patrick, much more of a menacing character.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting thing about Robert Patrick, I think we can all agree first off that he was amazing in this film.
Yeah, he really found the physical core of this character, because his walk, his everything about it is terrorizing.
What he said in an interview was that he actually studied the movements of sharks to learn how to play a predator.
That's called the animal exercise in acting in theater classes. They'll tell you seriously, each scene, think of an animal that this character would be like, whether it's vocal or physicality. That's an exercise where
Robert Patrick also got in really good shape for the movie. He does a lot of running, and apparently he wanted to do this so that he can keep up speed and never look really tired, because a machine would never look tired, right?
Yeah, and that actually helps him as a character, because he's obviously not as big as Arnold, and he can't, given his physique, he probably can never be Arnold. So he had to he had to make himself still, like Eric says, menacing in a different way.
Yeah,
and using his own.
Well, I mean, in universe, even though the T-1000 is smaller than the T-800, right? I mean, it's still stronger.
It's more,
even though. But
in our world, usually bigger is stronger. But obviously, that's deceiving and not true.
Yeah.
But that's what I found very impressive about Robert Patrick's performance in the film, as making himself a menacing figure.
Yeah.
So, props to him on that.
Probably one of the weaker aspects of this movie for me was just John Connor himself. I felt that he was a very kind of an annoying. Yeah, he was a pretty annoying kid as far as not only just with the acting, but as far as the writing for him goes. They give him a lot of these weird catchphrases of things that I guess the writers thought that kids say.
Yeah, I also agreed with that. He said he had some really weird dialogue, and I think that as a child actor, he did a really good job trying to pull it off. But I found there was a lot of weird things that he was forced to say to almost sound very 90s kid. There's no way I found him as annoying as other kids in movies, like the Anakin Skywalker from Phantom Menace.
Okay, sure,
but I can see your point that he was kind of annoying in this film.
I mean, I thought that you take a character. I mean, that makes it interesting though, because you're trying to make an arc for him, and he starts off as, like I said, a rambunctious child. It's hard to control, and he's not very likable because he's always disobeying his parents. And he's
hanging out with kids that have mullets.
Exactly.
Right. Mullet.
And then he suddenly gets a whole, life-changing moment.
Yeah, probably around the part where him and the Terminator go break his mom out of the mental institution is where
that's
I think
where
his character finally gets less annoying.
Exactly.
They cut down all the stupid little catchphrases.
Yeah,
jokes.
he kind of starts to
get more serious.
He matures a little from that scene on. And I think that's when you start to like him a little, and when he starts teaching the robot to be a little more human, even though he can't really be human. And I thought that was, it was charismatic of the character. Well, it was a little more.
Yeah, he definitely became a lot more likable about halfway through the movie, but he was. Still...
But I think that was the point of making him look so.
But I think
contemptible in the beginning.
But see, that's the arc of the character. I think you have him start in the beginning as someone whose life is pretty ruined because his mom went crazy and got sent to the hospital.
And he doesn't have a father.
He doesn't have a father. He's living in a foster home with these foster parents who he doesn't get along with. So he's acting out.
Although they're not really bad foster parents.
They seem pretty reasonable.
Right. But he's acting out a lot, and
so that's exactly why we feel like we don't really like him.
Okay, but it's not so much the fact that he's acting out that I take issue with. It's just that the lines they give him are very kind of cheesy. Like, ooh, look at this kid. I mean, it sounds.
What do kids? In your experience, what do kids usually say?
I have no idea.
They say usually cheesy, stupid things. They're
writer.
Children. What do you want them to do?
He's 10. He's not exactly like 6. Just saying random
Steven,
things.
I think you're overestimating the advancement of children.
This podcast thinks kids are dumb.
You said that in another episode. I had to cut
that. I'm gonna get it in on the
I wanted to bring up. Okay, so speaking of John Connor, like I said, he matures after that scene where he meets his mother. I wanted to add one of the most powerful scenes in the movie was that ending scene as he starts because he doesn't have a father, right? So the team. Yeah. What's it? The 800. The 800 101 Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. It becomes a father figure, but also like a favorite toy. Now we've all had a favorite toy when we were growing up, whether we like it or not. There's something that we kind of
or more like a pet,
something we clung to, and we had to see him give it up is a very difficult thing to do, and it was a very moving scene.
And he really he had it torn from him because he didn't really
give it up. He had it taken away from him,
and especially with this character that he's already lost and gone through so much in his life at such a young age. This is again like a really heart-wrenching moment.
Exactly. So I thought that scene, the whole plot that ended up there worked really well. Mm-hmm. And I think that scene's very memorable with Arnold.
Definitely a pretty iconic scene from the franchise of Arnold, going into the molten steel.
Yeah,
but I think might as well be lava.
Yeah,
but again, that's the arc of the character. You have him start as a troubled child. You show him maturing and gaining more responsibility throughout the film, and then at the end, he finally has to deal with loss and lose this father figure that he's had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sums up John's character. I thought Sarah Connor's character was also worked pretty well because we've all had those, cherished beliefs that nobody would listen to and think we're crazy and stuck in it's also very horrifying to be stuck in a mental institution.
But the worst, I think the reason why the audience identifies with Sarah so much is because you know that she's right, yet she's being wrongfully imprisoned.
We've all felt like that. That's what I'm trying to say. We've all felt like that. We've all felt, not all placed in a mental institution, but in other ways we felt imprisoned by our own thoughts, and we haven't. Nobody believed us, and nobody, everyone thought you were crazy. And I thought that worked.
No, but yeah, Sarah also had a pretty good arc. You definitely feel like she was actually, definitely more so in this movie, she was much more of a physical force.
Yeah, and this is where the point that I was making about the last movie comes back around, is that James Cameron makes his female character very empowered.
And physically, she actually looked like she could beat people up. Another great moment where she's running around, she's breaking out of the asylum, runs around the hall, sees the Terminator coming towards him, immediately thinks back to, this is the guy that almost killed us, last movie.
Yeah, she doesn't know, the changing events.
And she continues to not trust him, trying to kill him at one point in the movie, but of course John stops her. So that was great how eventually, her arc of her herself kind of starting to let her guard down a bit and, warming up to the Terminator.
And just being able to trust people again, because it seems like she's really cold. Not only that she's been in a mental institution, but even when she gets back with John, she's she's rough with him.
Yeah, she still has that motherly aspect of wanting to protect him, but she doesn't have any of the caring.
Yeah,
part of that, or the affection that you would
she's
associate with
very
that.
aggressive, and I think that's what she kind of learns throughout the movie, and especially going into the scene where she almost kills Miles Dyson.
Yeah.
Like, she's ready to kill him on the spot to, like, prevent the future, but seeing his family there, she can't pull the trigger and she can't finally do it.
Yeah, exactly. She kind of like regained some of the humanity that she lost from those years of the mental institution and, you know, the general paranoia about this future that she had to prevent. Again, like Terminator 2, like Terminator 1, really great pacing.
I think
something generally pretty consistent with in this franchise.
James just knows how to entertain.
Yeah, I mean, there's just always constantly something happening. They're always on the run, and they maybe have
a story behind it.
Yeah, and again, they maybe have one or two kind of rest periods during the movie to let the audience catch their breath, and then it's sort of on to the next thing.
And that's what I think is really cool. It's like they start the movie that, you know, you're just getting used to this universe. Then they give you like a big action sequence. You know,
which one? The chasing with
the chasing with the truck. So, like, they don't give you action right up front because then, you know, you have no care for it. They get you attached to the characters. They make you understand their roles a bit.
Not necessarily. I mean, a lot of movies nowadays will kind of start off with an action scene just to kind of hook the audience, and it doesn't necessarily make the characterization weaker.
No,
it's
but I
just
think that's why the pacing is done so well. It's like, you get a bit attached to this John Connor character. You see that the T-1000 is evil. You see that the T-800 is trying to protect him. And here's your sequence.
Yeah.
What do we think this one's better than the first one?
I mean, I think it's better than the first one.
I still like the first one as my favorite. I kind of look at it as, I mean, I don't think it's not comparable, obviously, to the Godfather trilogy, but I feel like it's kind of like the same thing. The first one's very good, the second one's better, and the third one's not as great.
I'm going to disagree with you right there. The first one's better.
But the thing is, my favorite Godfather is the first one, and I think the Terminator
is the
same
one. Yeah.
And the same thing with the Terminator.
No, I definitely think that this one is better just because it gets you more attached to the characters, I find, whereas like the first one we mentioned, like there's a bit of a weakness with Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor. Like that human story didn't grip me as much, whereas this one you really do feel the connection between John and the Terminator.
And John and his mom, and the mom and the Terminator. I mean, there's this...
And the Mexicans, we can't forget the Mexicans.
What Mexicans?
Her Mexican friends.
What Mexican friends?
She makes Mexican friends.
The ones who give the ammunition.
Oh yeah, that part. Whatever.
The desert. We didn't speak about the setting. Yeah, again, the West Coast, mostly West Coast setting. I don't know why.
The West Coast is the best coast.
Maybe so.
Birthdays was the worst thing.
Birthday was.
Yeah. So again, I agree. Also, I think probably Terminator 2 is the best of the series, just because it ups the action from Terminator 1 and gives us, you know, again, probably more compelling character relationships to follow.
Something about the first thing of everything. I don't know.
You're just looking for its novelty.
I do think that the weakness of this movie, again, I know we don't want to get too into time paradoxes, but if the war is supposed to be over in the future, how are more Terminators getting sent back in time?
Yeah, again, I mean, the time paradox thing is really something that kind of becomes an issue with these movies as they get more and more sequels.
And I think that's why the first one was tight. It's just like, okay, there's the end of the war, but they're trying to send it back in time. But this one, if the war continues past that point, then why didn't the machines just send a bunch of Terminators back in time to go after it?
Yeah, there's a lot of like little logical inconsistencies in this series that you could point out. But I mean, if you just try and stick as much as possible to the movie that's presented to you, I think it's hard to find something better than this.
Yeah, I think everything's great about it. I found like this movie also ended really tight, you know what I mean? Like they take the fact that Skynet could have still been created from the Terminator's arm and the Terminator's ship from the first movie, and they destroy that. They destroy Arnold's body from this Terminator movie. Basically, the movie is ended as neatly as possible, implying that there will be no more sequels. It feels like this one was more of a definitive end of Skynet is prevented, there will be no war, rather than the first one was just, okay, we prevented Arnold from killing Sarah, but we still have to face the war to come. This one seemed to have said, the war was over, we won, there will be no war.
Or will the machines rise again?